Okay, so you sent us this YouTube transcript, and wow, the title alone. Prayer warning. The Lord showed me another major attack coming, and we must stop it through prayer. Like that's pretty intense, right?
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, just from that title, we're dealing with some pretty heavy stuff here. Claims of prophecy, impending attacks, the need for prayer. I mean, it definitely piques your curiosity.
It really does. And it's
So,
from this channel called Last Days, which, adds another layer to it. So for this deep dive, we really want to dig into what exactly are the claims and warnings laid out in this video.
right on. Like, what are the specifics? What did this person actually say they saw and heard? And, what conclusions are they drawing from that experience?
Exactly. So let's get right into it. The speaker starts off by saying they received this very strong prophetic warning, and it came during prayer. But it's not just like, a feeling or a thought. They specifically say that their eyes were opened in the spirit realm and that the warning came both visually and audibly. So right from the start, we're dealing with this idea of direct revelation, like a sensory experience in a spiritual dimension.
And that's something we see a lot, right? Like across different belief systems and different forms of media. There's this recurring theme of people claiming to have this direct access to spiritual knowledge or insight.
hmm
And it's interesting how that often lends a certain weight or authority to the message they're conveying.
Absolutely. So the first vision that the speaker describes is pretty detailed. They start by talking about seeing all this massive farming equipment on the East Coast, tractors combined silos, that kind of thing. And then they zero in on fertilizer.
Yeah. And the focus on fertilizer, I mean, that immediately kind of raises a red flag, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you consider historical events. I mean, it's something that's seemingly ordinary, but we know it can be used for incredibly destructive purposes.
Exactly. And in the vision, it goes on to describe men secretly buying up huge quantities of fertilizer from lots of different locations. And this has apparently been going on since the previous summer. So it's like this long-term covert operation to stockpile this stuff.
And the fact that they're buying it from different places bit by bit, that suggests they're trying to avoid detection, right?
Yeah.
Like they're deliberately trying to fly under the radar.
Right. It's like they're trying not to trigger any alarm bells. Then the vision gets even more specific. The speaker describes these massive dump trucks that have been modified, and in the back they have these separations that are designed to hold 50-gallon drums of all these different chemicals.
Okay, so now we're talking about a serious level of preparation, right? Like this isn't just someone grabbing a few bags of fertilizer from the garden center. I mean, this sounds like a much more organized and potentially dangerous operation.
And the stated goal, according to the vision, is shilling. They're planning to use these trucks to basically recreate the Oklahoma City bombing, but instead of just black powder, they're going to be using fertilizer mixed with all these other chemicals.
Wow, I mean, the level of detail here is pretty disturbing, right? And the direct comparison to Oklahoma City, that instantly evokes a very specific and terrifying image in the listener's mind.
Oh, absolutely. And it gets even more unsettling because the speaker describes the truck as this huge diesel construction vehicle.
Yeah.
And it's been reinforced with armor plating on the front and underneath, specifically to withstand any attempts to stop it.
So that suggests a very deliberate and determined effort to overcome any resistance, right? Like they're anticipating that people will try to stop them. They're prepared to push through.
Yeah, it's like they're planning for a full-on confrontation. The attack scenario involving this truck is like something out of a nightmare. The speaker sees two men inside wearing vests packed with explosive, and they're using this armored truck to smash through police and military barricades in Washington, D.C.
Okay, so now we're talking about a direct assault on the nation's capital, right? I mean, that instantly raises the stakes, and the fact that they're going after D.C. specifically, that suggests an intent to strike at the very heart of American power and government.
Their goal, according to the vision, is to get as close as possible to the Capitol building and to other major landmarks. And when they're surrounded, that's when they're going to detonate their vests, causing this massive crater and wiping out everything around them.
I mean, that's a horrifying scenario, right? Just the sheer scale of destruction and loss of life that could cause. It's designed to evoke this feeling of extreme vulnerability, like nowhere is safe.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely designed to stoke fear. Now, the speaker shifts gears a bit and starts talking about this concept of lone wolves. This part of the warning focuses on individuals scattered throughout different towns who are sympathetic to terrorism and who might act on their own.
So this is a different kind of threat, right? It's not a coordinated attack by a large group. It's more about these isolated individuals who are harder to track and predict.
And the speaker specifically says that these lone wolves are people who are already living in America and who are described as nuts. It's not necessarily about illegal immigrants or foreign agents.
Right, so the speaker's basically saying that the danger could come from within. That there are people within American society who pose a threat and who might be inspired to carry out attacks.
Then the warning moves on to another specific threat. This time it involves cargo vans. The speaker saw white windowless cargo vans and 16 passenger vans that were loaded with barrels of fertilizer, although in smaller quantities than what was in the dump truck.
So the use of multiple smaller vehicles, that suggests a potential for simultaneous attacks in different locations, right? Like they're trying to spread out the chaos and make it harder to respond.
And according to the vision, these vans were being parked in New York City, specifically in parking garages and near buildings. It's like they're trying to blend in and not draw attention to themselves.
Yeah, it's a classic tactic, right? Hide in plain sight, especially in a busy city like New York, where there are already so many vehicles and so much activity going on.
The intended targets for these van attacks, according to the speaker, are Trump towers and other Trump properties across the country, including golf courses.
So now we're seeing a very specific and personal dimension to these threats, right? It's not just random acts of violence. It's targeted attacks against a particular individual and their assets.
Which brings us to the alleged motivation behind all of this. The speaker claims that it's retaliation for the assassination of Qassem Soleimani in Iraq.
Right, so the speaker is drawing a direct link between a past geopolitical event and these prophesied attacks. It's like they're trying to provide a context or an explanation for why this is happening.
The speaker even claims that they saw Soleimani's face in the vision and heard the attackers vowing revenge against America and specifically against Trump.
Wow. I mean, talk about adding fuel to the fire, right? That kind of detail just ratchets up the tension and the sense of impending danger.
Definitely. Now, this next part gets really intense. The speaker starts talking about what they call an act of war. They claim that over the past 4 years, 1,000 men have secretly entered the U.S. through underground tunnels, specifically drug trafficking tunnels, along the northern and southern borders.
Okay, hold on a second. That's a massive claim, right? We're talking about a full-blown infiltration operation, not just a few isolated incidents.
And according to the speaker, this whole thing has been a multi-hundred-million-dollar effort funded through cryptocurrency and untraceable communication methods.
So that suggests a high level of sophistication and coordination. Right. It's not just a ragtag group of terrorists. We're talking about something much more organized and well-funded.
The speaker says that these 1,000 men are divided into groups of 100, and they're stationed in 10 major cities across the country. And they're very clear about this. They say that this isn't just terrorism, it's an act of war by another government disguised as terrorism.
Wow. I mean, that's a huge accusation, right? To directly implicate a foreign government in something like this. Yeah. And the speaker even goes on to tie this back to past administrations and their failures to secure the borders.
Right. It's like they're saying that this is a consequence of America's weakness and that the country is now vulnerable to this kind of attack.
And it's interesting how the speaker weaves together these different threads, right? You have the religious element with the prophetic visions and the calls for prayer, but you also have this very political dimension with the focus on certain individuals and policies.
Absolutely. It's definitely a potent mix. The speaker also mentions specific concerns about political events, particularly alleged plans to disrupt the inauguration. They claim to have heard the word strike repeated 5 times after the election, and they distinguish this threat from the lone wolf incidents.
So now we're talking about potential attacks targeting a major political transition, right? A moment that's already fraught with tension and uncertainty, and the repetition of the word strike that's presented as a key warning sign.
And then there's this very personal appeal. The speaker urges listeners to pray for Donald Jr., specifically emphasizing that Trump's children are targets because of this whole retaliation plot.
That's a powerful emotional hook, right? To bring in the idea of innocent family members being in danger. It's designed to elicit a very visceral response from the audience.
Definitely. Now, here's something interesting. The speaker refers back to past prophetic warnings that they claim to have given, and they talk about how these warnings supposedly came true. They mention visions about New Orleans and Las Vegas.
Right. So by referencing past predictions that they believe were fulfilled, the speaker is trying to establish credibility. It's like saying, look, I've been right before, so you should take me seriously now.
Exactly. And they go on to claim that prayer actually lessened the impact in New Orleans, that it prevented an event in Nashville, and that it mitigated the damage in Las Vegas. They even mention the Cybertruck in relation to that event.
So the message here is that prayer has real power.
Right.
that it can influence events in the physical world and even avert disaster. It's a central theme throughout this whole video.
The introduction concludes with the speaker emphasizing that their intention isn't to scare people, but to call them to prayer. They believe that prayer can stop these things from happening and that it's the duty of believers to intercede.
Right. So they're framing this whole thing as a call to action.
Mm.
It's not about dwelling on the negative, but about doing something positive to prevent these terrible events from occurring.
So to sum up, we've got this incredibly detailed and frankly terrifying vision involving farming equipment, secret fertilizer purchases, an armored dump truck targeting Washington, D.C., lone wolf attackers, cargo vans hitting New York City and Trump properties, a foreign government orchestrating an act of war, and threats against the inauguration and Trump's family.
And woven throughout all of this is this recurring theme of prayer and the power of spiritual intervention. The speaker is very clear about their belief that prayer can change the course of events and prevent these disasters from happening.
So that brings us to you, our listeners. Having heard all of this laid out, what are your initial thoughts? What questions does this raise for you? How does this kind of information coming from this type of source resonate with your understanding of the world and the threats we face?
And here's a final thought to ponder. Given the speaker's emphasis on prayer and divine intervention, what does it mean for individuals to actively engage with this kind of information, regardless of their own beliefs or doubts? Is there a responsibility to take action, even if you're not sure what to believe?
It's definitely a lot to think about. And as always, we encourage you to do your own research, consider different perspectives, and come to your own conclusions. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.